Hey, good morning, everybody. Look who's here. It's the gorgeous Lebang Hossana. Hello, Lebang. How are you? I think you're on mute there. You're still on the mute, baby. Bubba.
What's
There we go.
happening? How you
What's happening?
doing?
Ooh, that voice sounds deep this morning. What's going on there, huh?
It is. It is. This is my bedroom voice. It's my Marvin Gaye.
Nice. That's your. Want to get sexual healing. Sexual.
Yeah. How are
Love
you,
it.
Gareth?
Al Green. You got to get that Al Green sound going. That's what you need. Everybody thinks of Marvin Gaye. They don't give Al Green the credit he deserves.
The
Al Green
credit
with
he deserves.
"No,
Yeah.
let's stay together." Love that. That's even better.
Yeah.
All right, we've got Bakh'abantu joining us in a moment as well. So we've got a busy day ahead of us on cliffcentral.com and plenty of stuff to talk about. We're going to get to all of that in a moment. There's lots going on in the news, which we have to talk about. We'll talk to Phil Kutzer, who's at David Motors, find out what the hell's happening in the world of cars. And also in Mpumalanga, where it must be getting pretty cold now in the mornings, early in the mornings. You know, there are parts of South Africa where, and I know we've discussed this once or twice before, but it bears repeating. If there was a competition for the coldest parts of South Africa in winter, the Free State would obviously win hands down, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that place, and the parts of the Eastern Cape that are also very, very cold. KZN, maybe in the mountains, but otherwise they get away with like a pretty tropical, not too bad winter. Gauteng's dry, but it's not ever that freezing cold that you get in the middle of the country. But there are also those little pockets of Mpumalanga, like in Dullstroom and Ermelo and places like that, where it is not lucky to be in the middle of winter. So we'll speak to Phil. He lives there. We'll find out what he can tell us about that. We also have plenty more on the way, including Rich Mulholland joining us again, which hasn't happened for some time. So we're going to catch up with Rich and see what's going on with him. Loads of good stuff for this Tuesday morning. And hopefully you are up and Adam and ready to go. First thing.
I think like the fact that you were able to wake up in this cold at 6 a.m., give yourself a pat on the back. The hardest part of your day is done, because just getting out of bed, just day after day, it feels like more and more of an uphill, a struggle. Like your blankets speak to you and they say, "Where do you think you're going? Me? You're going to leave me?"
This morning, my blankets were talking to me and they were saying to me, "Don't leave. Don't leave. It's bad out there. The world is horrible." And you know, if you're brave enough to just put one arm out of the blankets, you suddenly it hits you like a ton of bricks. You're like, "Ooh, is that what it's really like out there?" Not great.
Yeah, maybe I can stay in here.
No, I mean, you need that first cup of coffee to get your day started too. So we're with you for that as well. All right, let's see who's in the comments section this morning, because there are lots of things here. Sun Marie's talking about your glasses again. People love the glasses and the matching top there and the pink that you have going on. Freedom Fighter says Prime Evil Broadcasting has taken on Randall Abrams as a CEO for Prime Media Broadcasting. Isn't that cool? I think it's
crazy.
Cool.
Yeah. I read that whole thing. I was like, oh, okay, whoa, interesting. But like, if not him, then who, right?
Well, you know, there are so few talented, experienced people in radio management in this country. And I will say, like, Randall for a little while was my boss at SABC as well. And I've always got along with him very well. Obviously, we work together on Idols. We've laughed and talked a lot of nonsense. We've got plenty of music that we talk about. In fact, I was messaging him out of the blue on Thursday last week because I was listening to some songs on the way home. And whenever that happens, then we send each other like screenshots of songs. So it's kind of, we've got that sort of friendship going. But when he was my boss, he does manage things well. And he's not afraid to make tough decisions, which I think in radio, people need to start doing, because otherwise the runway is getting shorter and shorter for what's left for radio. And I'm happy for him, and I'm happy for the people at Prime Media. I really hope that he has tremendous success there. I can only see a couple of really interesting moves happening and taking place there under his guardianship, and let's see what actually transpires. But I think it's a good move. I really do.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good. He does really come across as the kind of person that like you can like probably laugh and joke with, but he gets shit done. Like there's a line that you probably shouldn't cross with him. Like if you work for him, just just stay on par. He seems like that, like a good kind of boss. Like he'll whip you
Yeah,
into shape. And it's just interesting times for broadcasting as a whole. So it's gonna be nice to
right.
see what he does, what he
Well,
can pull off.
he's a smart guy. People forget that he started YFM along with the team that came in there.
Yeah.
Cant was there. He was there. There were a lot of very, very smart people who made that happen. Greg Maloka, obviously, as well. So those are the guys who were brave enough to start a brand new station in a time where everything
Mm.
else was established. And they made a huge impact. I mean, there was nothing like YFM at the time. And they made everybody else a little bit scared for a little while. So
And
that was part of it. He also turned around 2 record companies, which is impressive. He turned around the Samas. When he was in charge of the South African Music Awards, it actually became a thing again. Remember? So
no, but
you don't, but it was him. He was the one who made it cool again, and I do
mm,
think that he has his hands on the controls there, and he'll make a difference. God knows they need it. All right, so
yeah.
let's get cracking with a few things that are in the news this morning and some stories that you may want to refer to. Just some breaking news for this morning. I hate when it's like someone died, but ENCA are reporting this morning that former Rhythm City actor Jamie Bartlett has died at age 55. Bartlett was best known for playing the role of David Gennaro in the ETV soapie. A close family member confirmed his passing to ENCA. So I know people are going to be looking up his picture because, I don't remember who's who in the soap operas, but this is what he looks like. Jamie Bartlett. He played a couple of roles on South African TV, so I
Mm,
think he's quite well known to audiences. Bald, he had a little beard, and he was usually cast as the bad guy in a
he
lot of
played
these
that
things.
role so well, so well.
Absolutely. So I don't really know a lot about him. I don't watch a lot of soap operas, but nonetheless, I recognize the guy, and I'm sad to hear that
Mm,
he died. I'm not sure why. Nobody knows the details, but he is no longer. And I thought
yeah.
I'd just mention that as a breaking news story this morning for those people who are just waking up and want to know what the hell's happening. So,
If you ever found yourself randomly like in Bram or like Maboneng
mhm.
between like 2017 and like 2019, he would literally be there just being the life of the party, just by
Mm,
himself, walking around holding
exactly.
this really cute artsy fartsy bag, and he just like walk up to people and just be so energetic and be like, "Hey, how you doing?"
Oh,
Like he was just a lively guy. Even like this past week, he had an event with like Somizi on the Thursday. This man was living to the T. So it's very, very like upsetting to hear that. He's just gone, just like that, just poof. And it's just a constant reminder that life be like that, bro. Like you have to live it to the T because one day he
right.
won't be here.
So you
Yeah.
just mentioned Somizi, and I haven't spoken to him for a little while, but I see his show is being advertised everywhere at the moment. So I
Dude.
assume things are going well for him because the last time we checked in, he had been uh, shit canned by a bunch of places because of the breakdown in his relationship and allegations of abuse and all kinds of things. And I don't know whether to give those any credence at all. Usually, my gut instinct is ignore it because it's usually
Yeah.
nonsense media cooking up, especially when they try to make one person the bad person and the other one the good one. Because as we've seen from, I have to say it, Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, we know that nobody is perfect, and we know that there's
Ugh.
no good guy and there's no bad guy.
Is that
But
our soundboard now?
unfortunately, people's memory is like 5 minutes at a max. So
Yeah.
that's what we've got. That's what we've got to work with. We realize that we've got goldfish brains. So if I say Amber Heard, Johnny Depp, people are like, oh, can understand. If you
Now
say
I
to
get
them,
it.
if you say, let me think of an example from ancient history. Um, even someone from not that long ago. I mean, even when Nelson Mandela and Winnie broke up, remember? It was like
Mm.
he was the good guy and she was the bad guy, and it
And
was
that's
just
that the end. Yeah. There was no gray
too
area.
too simplistic. So I didn't really pay much attention to the breakdown of Somizi's marriage. I didn't really pay attention to the media noise around it. Seems he's back up and running and doing very well. Am I right?
Yeah, I think you made the right choice there because it really was just a lot of noise. At some point,
Noise.
he was cancelled. It was just a lot
Yes.
of fluff, like, you did this, who did that, blah, blah, blah. And true to form, like in classic social media time, 7 days later, everybody got over it. Somebody else was being cancelled. And Sumizi's back to work. The only thing that is happening, it seems like his ex-husband is trying to, get some of the estate and blah 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 blah. So there's
Uh,
still a bit of
yeah.
drama, but he's still working. With or without the drama, he's just focused on, the bag and his brand and continuing to build this legacy that I think he's trying to build. So yes, the show goes on, basically.
So Sutherland in the Cape has to be the coldest, according to Congo Chris. But I like this too. The coldest place has to be a lonely bed on a Friday night.
Oh,
That is about
yikes.
right. Yeah, that's probably about right. Yeah. Believe it or not, I slept on tiles last night. Blow up mattresses are shit, says EP47. Were you staying
Jeez.
over at a friend or like what's the story there? Because
Was
that is
this a
cold.
choice? Sorry,
That's
dude.
cold.
Are you practicing for Survivor? What's going on? Damn.
And here's a bit of advice from Sun Marie. She says the best tactic is to switch it on the bedside light because the blinding light will wake you whether you like it or not. I suppose that's a good way to go. I mean, we're supposed to
Mm,
respond to light, right? That's the kind of animals we are. Our circadian rhythms are determined by the sun coming up and the sun going down, long before we had electric light. So that would make sense. Sanele says, "Morning, Gareth and Lebang, and the latecomer Buckies and a rip Jamie David Gennaro Bartlett, two of South Africa's best villains. The other one being Robert Barker Haynes Whitehead. Yes,
yeah, he was really known
those
for those roles, man.
those two are definitely the bad guys in South African soapies.
Mm,
So,
soapies.
yes, Cyberrag says Jamie Bartlett. Remember him from the early days of Isidingo. Oh yeah, I remember that too. Okay, very very good. Home Affairs rejected the visa of that vampire Papa Bushiri apparently this morning. So that's interesting. I
Vampire.
I can't say I feel bad about that. I mean, I would like to say, oh no, you're Home Affairs, you're useless, and you know, complain about them like we usually do. I think it's good that they denied him entry
Yeah.
to this country. There are at
This is
least
probably
a
one of
few.
the few times we can actually say, good on you, Home Affairs. You're actually doing something.
Correct.
Keep
We'll
that
pull
energy. Keep that same energy.
it back. Absolutely. Oh no, Lebang has discovered something super gross. Her housekeeper
It's
has
too
done
early,
something.
Gareth. It's
No, come on, you
early.
got to tell us. You got to tell us.
Oh,
Go on.
guys, it's
What
so early.
happened?
It's not even 6:30 yet.
Go on. Tell the
Oh, are
people. The
you are you
people.
sure?
People have got to know whether or not their housekeeper is a crook or if they're
Guys,
gross.
okay, so I'll just kickstart by saying just be careful when selecting a housekeeper. If anything, if you don't actually need one, then don't get one because housekeepers can just be tricky because you'll never know, right? So yesterday
Mm-hmm.
I was doing my laundry, and as you know, I'm back at mom's place, so like it's good vibes, blah blah blah. And while I was taking like the laundry that was in the machine out, like I saw something that looked familiar. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Let me take these out so I can put mine in. So I see like a bunch of like my old undergarments, and I'm like, okay, this is interesting. Why would my old undergarments be getting washed? So I'm like, I ask her, I'm like, hey girl, what's up? These look very familiar. And your underwear, your boxes that you wore 4 years ago, like where there's a little, missing stitch and where so I'm like,
Exactly.
yes. I'm like, hey, girl, what's going on? She's like, no, there was a time, before you moved out, they were just like sitting here. So, I was like, you thought what? And she just like started apologizing and was just like, oh,
Mm,
you weren't using them. Dude, I was so grossed out. I literally said to her, look, please can you just give them all back to me so I can just dispose of them? It's not about the
yeah.
fact that I'm using them or not. That is just a violation of like, ugh,
So you
it's
would
just,
rather you would rather go out. I know I would. I'd rather go out and buy brand new underwear for the
yes,
housekeeper than
yes.
have them wearing your old stuff, which is like a hugely especially your underwear, man. I mean, like, I don't want anybody wearing my old underwear. I don't like
Bro,
that.
and it's
When
all
I
for a reason. Like, there's a reason I no longer wear it. It's because it's no longer in wearable, blah,
Yeah, but
blah,
then
blah.
you know what? Okay, so the couple of things here. First of all, you have to be responsible for throwing out your old underwear. So
100%.
when it is old, put it in the rubbish. In fact, you
Yes.
should put it in a chakas in the rubbish.
Start a fire outside, burn it or something. But the point is, don't,
That stuff must not exist. It
it
must not
mustn't
exist.
exist. It absolutely
Yeah,
shouldn't
I'm with
exist.
you.
So I literally had like I was sort of like in a place I was like, should I get her undies? Should I offer her, the olive branch of, hey girl, would you like some? But I was just
Mm.
so upset at that time because I just felt,
The other thing,
violated.
and
It's
now I'm going into controversial territory here, is the I know that you're explaining to us how you talk to her with this, "Hey, girl, what's going on here?"
yeah,
But it needs to be a different kind of relationship with the housekeeper.
definitely. Definitely.
So, and I know you're kidding because I know you've managed people before, but you can't be friends. Like I've got
Nope.
family members who I promise you, they sit down and have lunch with their housekeeper every day. They're like best friends with them. They tell each other story. That is not a healthy relationship for someone
No.
who works in your house and has unbelievable access to, you know,
Your
the
life.
most intimate things in your life. You've got to maintain an arm's length relationship with someone who works for you in your house because you're not best friends. Sure, you can joke. You must obviously be friendly because there's no reason not to be friendly. You don't need to have this like um, aloof relationship with them. You don't need to be mean or any of that
Mm,
stuff, but it needs to be very professional. The moment you get too friendly, you're going to end up in a situation where, hey, I thought I could use this because,
yeah.
you weren't using it for like 3 months. I saw this thing sitting there and I thought, well, you don't need it. So I'm just going to use it.
But
Got to
Gareth, there's
do it.
absolutely no excuse. Like you see somebody's panty, and
Hmm.
bra, and you say, "Oh, you haven't been using this," so I just figured. You're definitely right. There has to be like a line that you don't cross with the help because once that line gets crossed, you're screwed. Then
Hmm.
it does become they're no longer at work. They are now a part of the family, or they just get a little bit too comfortable. And yeah, I don't speak to her like that. It's not that like bestie kind of relationship.
I know.
It's just you know
But some people do, hey? Some people
they
do, Lebang.
do.
I know. I've got someone in the family who does this with the woman who helps clean her house. She is her best. I promise you, they have lunch together if they're both at home at the
No,
same time. Yeah, 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 yeah.
no.
And you cannot be like that. So here is a disgusting story that'll make yours pale into insignificance from Woody. I once shat myself in a mall when I wanted to fart. I then went to the toilet, cleaned up, and threw my undies away in the bin there. Being bare ass in jeans is not a plan. So you got to throw them
Mm.
away, Lebang. That's
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
lesson there is that Woody's right. You got to throw them away. Hey, Bakh'abantu, what's up?
Hey B, are you wearing any
What's
underwear
up?
today, dog?
Uh,
What a gross story to come
I
in on.
know that's the rule. You always wear
Yeah.
underwear, guys. I don't know these people going commando everywhere.
No, that's gross.
Yeah, like I don't know what Woody's doing, being out there commando in jeans. You always wear underpants. One rule my mom taught me: underwear, a vest, underwear, and you can't skimp on socks because what if you die on your way to work or to school
That's always
and
the
they
thing.
catch
They
you,
always say that.
and then
They
when they
always
open
say that.
up your body there, you
Car
have holes in your
accidents.
underpants.
Yeah, it's so embarrassing. I mean, listen, I think that also underwear is something that is the only person who knows is you or the person who is seeing you in a sexual situation or before you go to bed at night. So those
Exactly.
hopefully that's someone who you want to impress. So why would you wear shitty holy underpants? I'll never forget that story about Joost van der Westhuizen. Remember when with the hooker and then she said he had holes all over his underpants?
Oh,
And I was like, ew, that's so gross. Like, if I'm ever in like some kind of scandal, they must say, oh, but he had nice underwear on, hey?
yeah. Like, oh, did you guys see his socks though? Damn, Gareth Cliff, those socks were fire. That needs to be how people remember you,
Right,
not with
right.
the guy that had holes in his undies and his socks. I completely
Exactly.
agree.
All
Exactly.
right.
It's like these people going around in malls in in PJs. Like if you wear your best PJs, I don't think they look like PJs. I think you look like luxurious.
But like the problem was when
Because
like one of these store owners, I think it was like Shoprite, they actually released a statement saying you
Spa.
are not
A
allowed to
spa.
enter our store or spa. If you're wearing pajamas, you're not allowed to enter our store. And people really got upset because people wake up, put on a gown and slippers, and go to the shops. It's such a normal thing. They don't care about the hygiene of others. They don't care about the hygiene of self, clearly, as long as they can do their shopping and
you
go
see
home and keep
now,
it
if
moving.
there's two types of people in the world. There's people who wear other people's panties, and there's people who go to spa in their PJs.
Well,
I'm joking.
I am neither of those groups. But Sanela has just said something really, this is bad, Lebang. What if she once wore your underwear, then took it off, washed it, and put it back with the rest? Yeah.
Dude, and Sanele, you know, like the superstitions that we have as Black people when it comes to like personal garments. Dude, you can't. You can't. Like now I have to throw them all away and start afresh because now I'll just never know. What if it's an obsession? What if she's just got like some cycle thing? You see, now I'm literally living on the edge because like now I'm just like, hey, I can't trust anything anymore. So,
That's right.
Thanks, Sanele, for that.
Carl says it reminds him of an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm where the chiropractor had torn underwear, and Larry, who was the client or the patient, stopped going to that chiropractor because as he bent over, he could see like his underwear, the band around the top of the underwear was all like frayed and torn. He was like, I can't trust someone who's got underwear like that. They're low personal hygiene.
What does it say about you? You know, like, do you care about yourself on that level? How are you going to care about me if you don't even care about yourself? No,
like, how do you put on these underwears with holes? Like, what are you doing with your life when you're like, it has a hole? Let me that's not the hole where the leg goes. I don't know how people do it. And I can't. It has to skimp on that.
No, you have to pay. You have to pay for good underwear. Please believe me. Like this is not something that I'm willing to compromise on. And I mean, I don't keep them past their sell-by date either. I think you've got to know when it's time, and you take them, you put them in a checkers, you tie it up, and you throw it in the rubbish.
Start a fire outside and you burn them.
No, guys, you skip a couple of things. You start a fire and you burn them. You don't throw away underwear, guys.
I've heard. Growing up, I was told the same thing.
Tell me about this superstition around underwear, with because you were saying just now, as Black people we have superstition. Do you mean that if someone wears that, they take a bit of you, and they can? There's any of this stuff around like a body part being used for like muti or something like that. If they use your underwear, can it be used for evil purposes by an mutagati? Or is there any of that?
No and yes. Yes, in the sense of like just witchcraft. The word
no
is
and
just
yes.
witchcraft.
Yeah,
So it's not like specifically underwear. It's just like any item of clothing that belongs to you, that is yours, should be yours. You shouldn't share it with other people. If you pass it down, it's like, you need to separate, I guess, what your soul from that item of clothing. Otherwise, like people who are very evil go out there, take your items of clothing and use them against you, and then your life won't proceed. So I mean, can you imagine an undergarment like my whole panty? Yeah. You've got access to my what? Nah, girl. This is why you must burn. You gotta burn your undies.
Your clothes have your essence, Gareth. Your clothes have your essence in them, and anyone can pick up on that essence. So now your underwear has the most essence because it's touching you in places. The most essence. So now you need to burn that. You burn that stuff.
So things like I shoes, keep my stay away from other people's shoes.
Shoes, socks, you keep them in a checkers. When you go back to the villages, you're like,
Yeah. Bakh'abantu, we've got like a bit of a delay on the... I'm gonna throw you out and put you back in because there's a bit of a delay on your channel here. So hopefully it comes back with less of a delay. So here's an interesting one. Michael says life is too short to find matching socks or to wear underwear. So let's just be clear again. You do not have to match your socks to your underwear. No one's asking you to do that. No one ever checks like socks and underwear. I don't think that's a thing. Is it?
No,
And then
but even like the socks don't have to match technically. Like I just kind of take whatever socks are there. If it's like a blue one and a purple one, I'm like, yay, socks. Especially if they're not
well,
like if it's like no one's gonna
I
be
mean,
seeing them.
whole books have been written about where those missing socks go, that you find one but not the other one, and they've done all kinds of things now to try and make it easier for you to find the socks. Like they put like a different colors on the socks, and then you can find the matching one easily if you buy those packs of like 12, and they're all
Yeah.
different colors, so that you know which ones are which, even if it's just the toe area. But I still find, like, if I've suddenly got a sock that's all on its own and forlorn, I would prefer to wear the matching ones, but it's not essential. If they're both black socks, for example, yeah, who's gonna check?
Mm,
And
exactly.
that's not the end of the world. Underwear, different story. But it doesn't have to
Yeah.
match anything. The underwear can be completely different to the rest of the outfit. Totally
But like
unimportant.
what's like the turnaround time? And this is like really gross, but like you mentioned that you don't, keep underwear like past its expiry date. What is
Yeah.
that? Do you like change you get a new set every
Well,
4 months?
no, so it
Or
depends, because I'm not going to be wearing them every day, and I've got a wide variety. So some I may only
mm,
wear like once a month, and therefore they could last for a very long time. But it's how it starts to look when it starts to when the threads start coming undone in the little band that goes around them,
mm,
or they have a
mm,
hole, or then it's time. Or if they start getting, the colors are very faded and it starts looking a bit embarrassing and shameful and
yeah.
sad. And
It's
there's nothing
talking
worse
to
than
you. And it's
sad
saying,
underwear.
I'm tired. Just
Mm,
would you wear
mm.
it in public? If the answer is no, throw me away. In fact, don't throw me away. Go outside and burn me. That's it.
And
That's all.
I've never worn someone else's socks by mistake or anything. Like when you go away for the weekend or whatever, and someone does washing, and then you end up with like someone else's stuff, or someone leaves things at your house or whatever. And that's not so great. But
Mm,
I've
mm.
never put them on by mistake and gone, okay, you know. Here's
No,
an interesting question. This is from Carl. He says, I have a male friend, apparently straight, who wears a thong. That is offsides.
that sounds extremely comfortable for him.
Do you think it's comfortable? I've never tried a thong, but I can't imagine it would be comfortable.
Even
I
if you
don't.
did, Gareth, please don't share that information with us. We'd
I
rather not
won't.
have to,
I won't.
think
But
about
I
the
do not.
possibility.
No, no, no. I do not like the idea of having like a string riding up the crack of my ass. I don't like that
No,
idea at all.
thongs are comfortable. To be honest, they actually are. In fact, they're more comfortable than like the full blown, what I call a full bahaza, like the actual full blown undies, because the full blown undies has just all this material. It's just too much going on. Sometimes you don't need that much material. And trust me, like I know because I've got quite a lot of booty. So generally, I grew up thinking I need to cover all of this, have it all
Mm.
intact and compact. And as I
Mhm.
grew up, I'm like, why am I taking out this wedgie every 2 minutes? No, just the song, it just, just it lets everything hang. You know what I mean? It's like getting
Yeah,
home and just taking off your
I
jeans.
do not. I
Nice.
can tell you right now, I don't know any guy who has ever admitted to me that he wears a thong. So I'm not sure about that.
Mm,
But you know what? Different strokes. What can I say?
I,
yeah.
I,
Carl, if
I
you
I think
go ahead.
anything to hang.
You don't want
You
I
anything
think
what?
to
for
hang.
guys, you don't want anything to hang.
Yeah, but you still, as I understand it, like a woman's G-string, there's like a thing in the front, but then there's just the string around the back. So there's nothing hanging technically, but I wouldn't want a string. It would feel weird. Maybe it's because when we were at school, the worst fear you had was getting a wedgie, you
Oh,
know?
really? Oh,
So maybe that's where the fear of the
yeah.
G-string comes from. That's not
Yeah, no,
something that,
it's
yeah.
yeah, there generally would be like if you grew up getting wedgied like in school or whatever, you would have that fear. But perhaps this is step one to getting past your fear is to just get into the thong vibe. It'll save you so much. Like really, all these like big ass panties and it's too much. It's just not comfortable. Like
Yeah.
no,
Ruth calls
not
it
for me.
Ruth calls it butt floss. Yeah. All right. So
Yeah.
EP47 says thongs are sexy as fuck. Do you prefer granny panties? Yeah.
That's a
Well,
good
listen,
question. You see,
it's up
an answer
it's up
from
to
your
each.
heart.
It's up to each person. I would rather wear granny. Men don't wear granny panties, but you know what I mean. Like I'd rather wear like some long ass boxes than a G-string. I've never tried that. That's not on my list of things to do. Sorry. Anyway, this is funny. Hanging out with Jay says, my underwear always gets a hole right there in the bullseye at the back. I don't get it. Maybe there's a lot of activity going on there.
Yeah, it sounds like a 2-for-1. You don't have to take them off.
Yeah, exactly. It sounds like for easy access.
All right. Well, we got to leave this behind. We got to get to some headlines this morning. Let's see what's going on in the headlines. First story you need to hear about today is formula milk. There are online groups that are hunting for baby milk during a shortage in the US. This is interesting because the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, right? They have basically been really useless in all of this. Instead of okaying certain European and English UK formula that could have been imported if they'd just okayed it, they've just sat there on paperwork. And now, apparently, the critical baby formula shortage is putting a lot of people into a very uncomfortable situation. I mean, Lebang, you will be the best person to talk about this. How important is baby formula? And if you couldn't find some, how desperate would it make you as a mom?
Oh man, I'd absolutely lose my mind because here's the thing that they don't tell you about breastfeeding. That thing is hard. It's very difficult. It's not easy to maintain. And they always shove it down your throat that if you're a good mom, you'll breastfeed. If you're a bad mom, you'll give your child formula. So you always want to try. And when you try and it doesn't work out, you feel the pressure and you eventually have to get the formula. So Gareth, if I ever woke up and I went to the store and I couldn't get formula, I would freak out because what am I going to do? I can't feed my child from myself because I'm struggling, whether it's to maintain a diet or whether I'm completely stressed with work or whatever the case is. So it would really put me in a quite a tight situation. It wouldn't be pleasant at all, to answer your question, and it's just completely unfair that this is the reality for most mothers in America. What's going on there?
Well, there are a whole lot of moms who have taken to the internet to try and hunt for wherever they can find baby formula because it's very, very difficult for them to get hold of at the moment. And it's a serious crisis. I mean, if you are a mom and you don't, let's say that you can't breastfeed, a lot of women can't, or if you've got more than one kid that needs to be breastfed and you need that formula. And frankly, it's a very, you can't make it yourself at home. You can't just make it out of other ingredients. So this is a tight and tough and horrible situation for a lot of people. And it doesn't help for people to say, well, breastfeed your kid. If there isn't formula, it's a big problem. So
yeah, no, that's not the answer. That's really not the answer. Literally, I promise you, Gareth, breastfeeding consistently is one of the hardest things like a woman can do. And it's like you're saying, if you've got other little kids, so my 3-year-old is still on formula right now. Well, she's turning 3. My 1-year-old is also on formula, and I'm giving birth in a couple of weeks. So if I choose to breastfeed my newborn, I'm still going to need formula for the 2 other little ones. So imagine if they didn't have formula, what would I be doing? Giving them like watered down pap? No, man.
Can't do that. Belgium is the first country to introduce compulsory monkeypox quarantine. Now,
watered down pap. That sounds disgusting.
It's almost as disgusting as this monkeypox. So apparently, the Belgian health authorities took a decision on Friday. The monkeypox is a disease in the same family as smallpox. Symptoms include a distinct bumpy rash, a fever, sore muscles, and a headache. Monkeypox is less deadly than the smallpox, mortality rate below 4%. Okay, so let's take all of these little bits of info in because otherwise it becomes a coronavirus situation where people just lie about who it affects, why it affects them. You know how we heard, it's going to kill everybody. Remember with corona in the beginning? Everybody's in danger. Kids, old people, bullshit. Turned out it was just older people who were at serious risk, people who were overweight, people who had lung conditions, but nobody listened to that. And eventually we're all running around terrified that it was us next. We were going to die. So monkeypox is less deadly than smallpox. Mortality rate is way below 4%. Experts are worried about the unusual spread of the disease beyond Africa where it usually circulates. Oh, so we've already got it in Africa. So, okay, then we've probably got natural immunity. Anyway, the Belgian Institute of Tropical Medicine has said that the risk of a larger outbreak in the country is low. Talking on Twitter, the microbiologist Emmanuel Andre, who is in charge of the National Reference Lab in Belgium, on Saturday said the 4th case had been confirmed in the country. So what they're saying is it is spread by sexual contact mostly. So if you're not having sex with a stranger, you don't have to worry about monkeypox, apparently. That's what they're saying.
You know, South Africa, dude, with the way we like things, like you'll see any week now, monkeypox would have arrived. They would have started with all the, hey guys, all the chaos will begin. People will start freaking out. That's just the natural cause of things, especially after COVID-19. People are already like, yeah, prepare yourselves. It's on its way here. You know, South Africans, we're gonna feel left out if it doesn't come here. We'll find a way to be like, yeah, we're gonna need a vaccination, comrades, of the monkeypox because it's here. Everybody, please put on a mask, even though it has nothing to do with a mask. Just
Don't you love that accent?
It's like, yeah, you know exactly who I'm talking about when I speak like that. That's the scary
Government. What did you want to say, Bakh'abantu?
I think you stop going commando. That's the new one. The government will enforce us to wear underwear without holes.
Yeah, they'll have people checking. You know, the security guard at the entrance to check us is going to say to you, excuse me, I want to check quickly if you have got the underwear. Otherwise, maybe we'll spread the monkeypox. And also, maybe you could get monkeypox if your housekeeper is
no thong.
No thong.
No thong.
All right. Well, apparently, I listen. I feel sorry for everybody, including politicians who were evacuated from their houses in KZN because the flooding over there over the weekend. So KwaZulu-Natal Premier Sihle Zikalala was among the residents forced to evacuate their homes in Lemercy, north of Durban, during the weekend floods that caused damage throughout the city. Zikalala, who lives in a small coastal community there, said he was working with others in the area to evacuate people and restore road access. He said, yesterday I worked till late coordinating the evacuation of people in the danger zone. I also drove myself out with my 3 boys, but all of this could not have been achieved without the support and prayers of the one and only Nelly Zikalala, that's his wife. So, you know what? Occasionally, these things hit everybody equally because they're acts of God, they're acts of nature. And here's poor old Sihle Zikalala having to evacuate his home along with everybody else. Got to say, though, Lemercy is a nice area to live in. And I mean, you would expect the premier to live in a nice area, right?
Yeah, but I mean, as you're saying, when God decides it's time, it doesn't matter who lives where. Like, we all become equals. At that point, when that water comes flooding in, hey man, we are one. And it's a nice reminder of that. I mean, not nice, but it's just a reminder of that.
Pumlani says, oh no, shit. Are they going to spray sanitizer up your ass because of the monkeypox?
Pumlani, how did you know? Oh, don't jinx us. Don't jinx us.
Can you imagine? Imagine the same people who've been saying to us all over the country, sanitizer. Imagine them saying to you, can we, yeah, bend over. Oh man, okay, I don't want to think about that. Cape Town is getting new traffic lights with plans to roll them out to the rest of South Africa. This is interesting. They've announced a new traffic signal system which will be tested at key intersections over the next 6 months. Apparently, it is specifically designed for the city's public transport system and aimed to end confusion among motorists at these intersections. Up till now, I've served both for private vehicles and my city buses. The bus signals were often mistaken for vehicular traffic, resulting in private vehicles reacting erroneously and causing unfortunate collisions. Now, so they've got bus-only signals. Is that right? Is that what it is?
This is a bit sus.
How does it? I don't know how that works. I would probably be one of those people in the collisions. Anyway, so it's good. Let them try it out in Cape Town first. If they can't get it right, then they'll have to stop rolling it out, and we won't have to worry about it. Good luck, Cape Town. Good luck.
Can we have taxi-only signals?
No, we already do. We already do. It's
They do
this.
whatever they want. Yeah.
It's this.
It's
It's like
this.
hazards and
It's hand
flashing.
signals. Yeah,
It's
correct.
everything.
So, I don't know what you're talking about, Bakh'abantu. We've already got taxi-only signals, except that
We do
nobody really knows, and they're still unpredictable. And even though the taxi driver's signaling, he could change his mind at any moment.
at any
That's how
point, and it's not in the K53 book either. You just have to learn by experience. That's one of those things where you only realize and figure it out as you drive more often. So they exist, to answer your question. But I want to
correct.
know, guys, like, and I guess there's like a hierarchy of like needs and wants and blah blah blah. But when they announce something like, hey, we're releasing new traffic lights because of ABC, don't you feel some type of way with regards to how many other problems that we actually have in the country? Like, some places still don't have water, some places, a lot of schools are still in disarray, and you guys want to give us traffic lights, fancy traffic lights. I think we'll be okay without the fancy traffic lights. Let's prioritize. I don't know if it's just me.
This is the problem. No, you're absolutely right. But this is the problem with living in societies. You have to make choices. You can't sometimes have everything at once. And there are always going to be places and people who have absolutely nothing. And then there are going to be people who have all the latest cutting edge technology. And if we don't have inequality, we will not have development. What I mean by that is that the first person who can afford a huge television, one of those ones that takes up the whole wall. Remember those that they came out with in the 90s?
Yeah.
One of my friends had one of those. And it cost like hundreds of thousands of rands. Now, if he couldn't afford that, if everyone could have afforded that, straight off it doesn't happen that way. Someone has to pay the expensive full price for something when it's brand new. And then as more and more people can afford it, it becomes cheaper. And they can make big flat screen TVs for everybody eventually. But we need
I get it.
inequality, otherwise there's no development. And it's an
I get it.
unfortunate,
I just think like the basics, dude. Like, let's just have running water. Let's have electricity. Let's have toilets. Let's have like desks in schools, and then we'll look at the rest. It pains
I
me.
mean, when it comes to government, you're right, and I think that's a fair point. But at the same time, do you want to go around to people who live in tiny little shacks in informal settlements and say to them, "Hey, you don't even have running water. I'm going to take your satellite dish away and rather give you water." You can't decide that for people. They must decide their own priorities. Am I right? Why are you laughing, Bakh'abantu? Do you think that's funny?
No, I agree with you in the sense that from an emotional standpoint, Lebang, you're right. Like, it does make you feel somehow, but that's how society is just structured. It is a case where people being free are allowed to choose what they want, what they can afford, and all of these. And then it's that navigating that ladder. But in terms of our country, where we're kind of dependent on government, our government does play around a lot with money. But in terms of like the private sector, that is an entire individual situation. But our government does play around with money. Like, it does make you feel somehow.
It does. I saw yesterday somewhere like apparently KZN wants to release a new Ferris wheel. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. But dude, you just had a flood 2 minutes ago. Oh, I've got an idea. Let's build a new Ferris wheel. That'll attract more tourists. Okay. Yeah. And we saw with this whole this 22 million flag saga. Do you see where I'm going with this? Like, we're doing a whole lot of fluff and a whole lot of smoke and mirrors, but like the real basics that the average South African just needs to survive, we can't cover that. All right.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah. There's a lot of putting lipstick on a pig in South Africa.
But it happens all over the world. And, we've also got to remember that the budget that they have for traffic in the city of Cape Town is not in the big pot of money that is meant to be spent on school desks.
Yeah.
They go to different departments, and it has to be managed by different people. It's not as if, it all comes from one central pot. I mean, it does in terms of taxes, but the way that those are distributed and the way that the budgets are allocated is very, very different. And I'm not making excuses for government.
Yeah.
I do think it's funny how government has had to backpedal on this flag. Hey, that's been an interesting move.
I think fantastic. It's fantastic. Yeah. Like, do you really think we're going to sit here and let you guys clearly like fuck us, like right into like you showing us that you're fucking us? Like, hey guys, look at me fucking you. This is your hard-earned taxpayer money. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to build a flag. We don't need a flag, bro.
and the logic. I think what sealed it, and again, this is a victory. This is a victory from the South African people against the government, just like the e-tolls were as well, where we just said, you know what, we're not paying, we're not going to do it. And this is a question of we don't want your stupid flag. You take your flag with 100-meter pole and shove it as far up your ass as a 100-meter pole will go. And people saw that interview of Natim Tetwas on JJ Tabani's show, and I think that's what made them go, you know what, actually, this guy's a moron. And he's in no position
logic.
to be spending our money.
Absolutely no logic. You could see that they were just clutching at straws, trying to find a reason as to why they came to this decision. No, because the steel and metal industry need an input, so this pole will do that. What
nonsense?
That's what killed me, Lebang. That's what killed me. It's like he's like, oh no, it's exaggerated. It's not 22 million for the flag. It's like the quantity surveying, the land, looking for the right position. I'm like, oh, guy, nah, it's not.
Dude,
that's not right.
That flag. Every time I drive past it, it better freaking know me. It better freaking make supper for me. It better freaking buy me a house. Like the lights better light up. It better keep me warm at night. I have expectations of that flag if it's going to be 22 billion. It can't just be another flag flying in the wind. Okay? Damn.
Well, I do think that a lot of stuff that we don't get as cut up about. I mean, the flag was such an obvious symbol of government wastage, but there are so many things that they say cost them. It's going to cost us 4 billion to fix the roads in KwaZulu-Natal. Meanwhile, I think they could probably do it for 2 billion, but we know that there's 2 billion of fluff around it for some politician to get a payoff, for this person to do that. And what we saw with that Natim Tetwa interview is how that he doesn't actually know how to break down the costs. And someone has gone in there and inflated those costs because it's government money. In other words, it's taxpayers' money. Nobody's looking after that. If you can get your hand in the till, you get your hand in the till. Makes me wonder how many other things we're spending too much money on. Even things that they say we need, and things that let's agree with them we need. Basic infrastructure. But how much of it, if you had to actually break it down to see, like, how much does the gravel cost? How much does the tar cost? How much does the labor cost? If we actually work that out, how much profit is built in for all the people along the way, whether they're middlemen, whether they're councillors, whether they're politicians, whether they're the companies that are doing this for them because they can't do it in-house anymore. There used to be a time where the provincial municipalities or even the cities themselves used to have their own crew that worked on these things. So it was all built in. Now, because there's so much thieving going on, everything has to be triple checked, and we have to have all these steps in place to make sure no one's stealing, and they still steal anyway. So it makes me wonder.
Everybody gets a cut. You know how it is, Gareth. Everybody at every single point has to get a cut. And there's a lot of people at each checkpoint. I don't know if you guys remember that stadium that they refurbished or whatever. Yeah. And then when you look at the actual stadium, it's literally just like a couple of stands. And then there's a big tape. They cut the tape and they go, oh, look at the stadium that we put up for you guys. That stadium was bollocks.
I mean, Bakh'abantu was on the show on Thursday when we discussed this with Pumi, the one in Attridgeville, which they've now had to demolish because it hasn't been used since 2010, not once. And we built that especially for them. It's the kind of wastage that absolutely kills me. So, I mean, according to Congo, Chris, 22 million rand in the flag will translate to 4,000 RDP houses. Well, we know which one we want. We want those RDP houses. Thank you.
We do. We need.
Oh no! I thought we wanted the flag.
Oh yeah,
I thought the flag was going to end global warming and bring back electricity.
Yeah, I mean, Sanele is quite right. What was the worst about the Natim Tetwa, I think we played that interview here on the show, is how he said when he was explaining why the flag matters, it lit at night because the education must go on during the day and night.
What fuckery is that? What is that? Oh.
So you don't need actual lights. You don't need Eskom warning. You need the flag.
Yeah, exactly. The irony is that he thinks that lights are going to be on all the time because Eskom knows what they're doing. I mean,
Eskom is
really.
that great, so the
Yeah.
lights will be on. Come on, guys.
And according to Congo, Chris, did you see Eskom's offices in Port Elizabeth were shut off last week for failing to pay their electricity bill? Eskom's own offices didn't pay.
These jokes write themselves.
I know. Maybe we do deserve this government, huh? That's what I'm
What did
finding.
we do to deserve this, Gareth? Really, what did
Well,
we do?
I mean, if we are dumb enough to hire the worst people to run things, then don't we deserve some punishment? That's it. Now, there's
The
a
thing is,
horrible question to have to face up to.
the people that hired these people are on their way out. They're not going to be here to
Yeah.
see, these flags and to see these Ferris wheels and to see these fancy robots and stuff. They already on their way out. We are the ones
Have you
who.
heard, by the way, there's a word that gets used more and more if you listen to government. And again, you have to actually listen to them, which is, I know it's a hard task because it's very boring. There's a word that they keep throwing in now because they can see that the horizon is not looking good. They can see that they're going to be out soon. They'll be replaced by coalitions or whatever else. And the word they're using is legacy. They are trying to leave behind something that will prove they did something, which may in some cases result in a couple of good things happening. But I think mostly it will result in ego projects like a huge flagpole and nonsense like that. So people of South Africa, you've proven yet again that you can change their mind, you can turn them around, you can embarrass them into adopting a new strategy. Let's keep doing this. Keep your eyes open. All right.
Hoorah to us. Yeah, it's nice that something actually happened. Like we made that much noise that they actually stopped. Like they were like, okay, cool. If we proceed, it's not going to look good for us. And here we are trying to leave a legacy in inverted commas. I'm sorry, that just sounds like they've run out of ideas to me.
Well, while we're talking about stupid things,
But like
and
actually,
yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say it actually shows like a bankrupt of ideas if they think a flag is a legacy. What about houses? What about all of this? Like, what about grandstanding and doing like fancy stuff that's gonna like, oh, the ANC did that for us. During the ANC's time, there was no load shedding. What about that?
How about that would be nice. All right, but here's another display of how dumb people are. And this is not government. This is ordinary old us. Because there are going to be people who will buy this piece of shit. But Adidas and Gucci are selling a 20,000 Rand umbrella. But guess what? It's not even waterproof. So there is an umbrella.
One function for an umbrella.
I mean, isn't this is the one reason you want an umbrella, right? And this thing is not waterproof.
Well,
so
no, that's not why I want an umbrella.
Oh, well, okay. What do you want an umbrella for?
Guys, if it's Gucci, if my umbrella is Gucci and my umbrella is Adidas, I do not care if the water comes in or not. I am buying that purely to show it off. I'm buying that purely to stunt and show you guys that I've got money and I'm going to walk around with it even when there's no rain. That's it. It's just a part of my swag. It's like a handbag. Doesn't even need to do
20,000 Rand of swag.
Yeah.
Here's what it looks like. There it is, Adidas and Gucci. We've got the Gucci colors. We've got the Adidas logo. It's got a wooden stick with like a G for a handle. There's a bit of brass detailing. And it's $1,290. Translates roughly into 20,000 Rand. And it's not even waterproof. What do we think of this? What do you think, Bakh'abantu? Are you with Lebang on this one?
I hate this, but they're calling it a sun umbrella. So I guess Lebang is on the money there about about it being
umbrella,
not for rain. Yeah, a sun umbrella. It's only to protect you from the sun. It's just there to be flash, man. It's there. Yeah, like rain is temporary, drip is forever, right? We all know that saying.
Exactly.
Probably the EFF will be rocking this with their overalls.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. It's unbelievable. And Koketso is saying the same thing. Drip is forever, not functional. Elbow cough. I think that's hilarious. Carl says, is that the Santam umbrella? Fuck me. That umbrella is for those, says Parallel Parking, raining money who need shade from all the sunshine in their lives. and the G is to hook onto and catch a rich man. That handle.
Hey.
That's also interesting. Oh, the EFF will be outside the French embassy today, wanting for the French to leave the continent. Is this a thing? Is this really going on?
Apparently, I don't know how far they took it, but the last time I heard about it, like the EFF was quite angry at the French being in South Africa, and like so they might be.
Those guys, I again, I don't want to go into party politics first thing in the morning because actually it's not that interesting. But the EFF have really run out of stuff to do. Like they will do anything at the moment for some attention because they're so irrelevant. They've been left out of the conversation. They're being marginalized in every which way because we saw during coronavirus, they were useless. They didn't add any value at all. They were frightened of everything. They went along with the ANC on everything. They took shelter under, to use this metaphor, the ANC's umbrella during all of that time. And I think suddenly people are realizing, like, hang on a second. Anytime we hear from Julius or any of the other guys in the party is when they can make a noise about something dumb that doesn't affect most people's lives. Seems like they have run out of usefulness. So there's another thing we can dispose of along with 100-meter flags and Gucci umbrellas that don't keep you dry. I mean, I think let's just put all of these into the can and throw them away. And by the way, Sanela says, we will see that umbrella at Small Street in about a week, selling for 20 Rand, and it will actually be waterproof. When you buy the fake one, in that case, the Hong Kong is the one that you want.
Yeah, look, they can take the French out of South Africa, but we'll find those things there in town at Small Street. Those things aren't going anywhere. So fine.
Yeah. If everyone had a job, says Kogetso, there wouldn't be a pool of unoccupied youths who can join the EFF protests on demand during working hours. That's exactly right. But you know what? That isn't the EFF's fault that there's unemployment. That is the ANC's fault. So they are feeding the EFF a whole lot of young people who have nothing else to do. That's about right. What did you want to say, Bakh'abantu?
A lot of angry. No, that is actually true from Koketo. A lot of angry young people that don't know where to direct their anger, and then Julius obviously orchestrates them into a frenzy against stuff that doesn't matter, like the French embassy.
Right. And they think it'll make a difference in their lives, but it's not going to. All right, it is 7:00. When we come back, we got a whole lot more for you, including our friend Rich Mulholland, who we haven't spoken to in some time. I know a lot of people love hearing from Rich, and today I'm sure will be no different. So we'll talk to him. I've got a specific thing I want to talk to him about, which we'll get to as well. And yes, Terence just reminding us that Jamie Bartlett, a.k.a. David Gennaro, from the soap operas, I think it was Rhythm City was his major role, and Isidingo, he died, and that was in the news early this morning. So obviously rest in peace, but thank you for that, Terence. It is 7:00. We'll be back in a moment or two. Bakh'abantu and Lebang and me and you and everybody else, make sure that you are around for at least the next hour. We're going to have lots and lots of fun. Stay with us. Do you suffer from collectivism?
I started collecting when I was about 8 years old.
Do you have an obsession with objects?
I sort of got into collecting TV cars.
Are you a fanatic? A devotee? Are you someone exhibiting enthusiasm or strong passion?
When lockdown hit, when everyone was kind of bored at home, they started Googling, like, what are these things worth these days?
Cliff Central dispenses a weekly dose of collectomania. Join me as I talk to compulsive collectors. Fascinating.
The frame's total value is probably about 12,000 Rand.
Possibly a little weird.
I developed this infatuation with the Statue of Liberty.
Collectomania, Mondays on the Gareth Cliff Show. Brought to you by SA Gold Coin Exchange and the Scoin Shop. All right. Well, more and more organizations are embracing a coaching style of leadership, and they can become a platform through which people can achieve their full potential. If that makes sense to you and you want to know more about it, well, you're at the right place, because Leadership Books Unpacked, in their latest episode with Manda Tsifularo and Ngobile Ngobo, they have unpacked Sir John Whitmore's 5th edition of Coaching for Performance and share insights on how you can lead a high-performance culture. That's Leadership Books Unpacked, which is steadily becoming one of our most popular shows. You can get it on cliffcentral.com, wherever you get your podcasts, brought to you by Hollard and Superlead. Very, very exciting stuff. Lebang Hosana is with me. It is a Tuesday morning. It's chilly out there. And it's only going to get chillier as we head towards June and July, which is just around the corner, by the way. I mean, you blink and it's payday.
Yeah, aka tomorrow.
Could not come a day too soon, I think, for a lot of people, because there are, electricity bills are going up, petrol prices are going up, everything's going up except the salaries, which does not make things easy for anybody. And of course, you're going to get to the shops and you're going to see, that's a rand more expensive than it was last month, because petrol prices affect everything.
Everything. And now you're really sadly at the point where it's like, do I really need these cornflakes? I don't really need the cornflakes that much. I can go another week with, you have to choose between pouring gas and some of these things that you were just able to get whenever you felt like it. Now it's really scary times. And Gareth, I don't think it's going to get any better. These next couple of months is where we're really going to start seeing proper flames, I think.
Well, I know it's somebody else's birthday this Friday.
Oh my God, really? Who? Whoever could you be talking about?
What's her name? Starts with an L. It's something. Bonang.
Lerato?
No, Lebang. It's you.
Yes. Oh, yeah, that girl. Oh, dude, it's actually my birthday. Can you believe I'm not moved? I'm not woohoo, let's make it I'm so chilled. I'm relaxed. I'm just kind of just going. I don't know why. If it's because of the pregnancy, maybe it's because of the weather. I can't tell you, but usually I make such a hoo-ha about my birthdays. But this is the one time where I'm like, yo, man, I'm just happy to be alive. I don't even know how old I'm turning. I have to take out my calculator to check.
Well, I hate to break it to you, but the older you get, the less you want to celebrate birthdays. And I mean, I've got a couple of years ahead of you here, and I'm in no hurry to make a fuss about my birthdays anymore. I didn't last year. I didn't the year before. Congo Chris says, Lebang is so old, her ID number starts with 1, or is just 1.
You got me. Busted.
Oh my God. Imagine.
Yeah,
So
it's just another day.
what happens to people, sounds kind of obvious, but what happens to people who were born, they're still alive? I mean, there's that one woman who claims to be 120 or something. Let's say they were born in, let's say 1912, because, or even 1922, frankly. They would have a 22 at the beginning of their number, just like someone who's born right now.
Actually, yeah.
Do we have enough numbers? I mean, we must have, right? The thing is long enough.
Yeah, they're definitely reshuffling.
So if you're really old, if you're turning 100 this year, you were born in 1922, and you're still alive, then you could, people might mistake you if they just look at your ID number for being newborn.
But you won't have an ID if you're a newborn. So no.
Oh, that's what are you doing? You're not filling in forms or anything, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You get
Yeah,
like a
no.
20-year grace period there, I suppose. All right. So
Yeah.
what is this? What is the story with this movie? I haven't seen it. It's called Everything Everywhere All at Once. What is
Gareth,
this?
come on, you haven't seen it. I really was expecting you of all people to at least have seen it by now. It's
What is it?
probably it's
I
the
don't know.
best piece.
I've never even heard of it, let alone seen it.
Are you serious? Just
Promise you.
look it up. Everything, everywhere, all at once. And it's exactly that. It's the story of, I don't want to give away too much. Just, it's brilliant. It's a story of a woman who lives this life and multiple lives. You know, there's like this thing in cinema now where like multiverse universes are like, oh, that's like in fashion, you know, like
Yes.
crossover. So we see this woman live everything, everywhere, all at once, and how that all comes together and how beautiful. It's a piece of art. Visually, it's just lovely. Storyline is fantastic. I have no doubt that you are going to enjoy this movie. And Gareth, I would never lead you astray. I'll never lead you into the dogs. Please check it
No,
out. It's
you
that good.
haven't. I mean, you told me to watch the Senzo Miiwa documentary. I watched that. That is some fascinating stuff. I'm very glad. So I took your advice on that one. I'll take your advice on this one. It does sound like one of those mind-bending movies, though. This whole idea of a multiverse. This is becoming a very popular trope now, as you rightly pointed out, with what Doctor Strange and all of these other movies. It's a difficult thing to get your head around because I'm not sure that we're built to understand everything everywhere all at once. It sounds very, very complicated. I remember I watched that. What was that movie with Matthew McConaughey where he he does space travel, but he goes into the black hole and Interstellar.
But
And he goes
that
to
was so
this
nice.
planet where time is really, really slow, and then he goes to another place where it's really fast. So he ages very much more or very much less than the other characters. Listen, by the time I finished that movie, I was like, my brain hurts. And it was a good movie because they actually consulted with, astrophysicists and people who've studied everything from, heavenly bodies to string theory to everything else. And it was absolutely incredible, but very, very much not the movie that you want to do a first date on, or the kind of movie that you just want to lie on you just want to lie on the sofa doing nothing, watching, and you kind of want your brain to work less, not more. So I'm hoping that these multiverse movies aren't going to do the same thing to me.
And really, Interstellar was one of the better ones. I don't know if you remember a movie called Tenet. Do you remember Tenet? Oh my word, Tenet was horrible. It was like a movie in reverse, and you had to watch it like twice just to understand. Really, some of them are just out there to confuse you, and you sit there and you're like, what exactly are you guys doing? But this one, I promise you, it's not that complicated. As long as you don't have your phone like on you while you're watching, just focus. And you'll understand it. It's not a freaking math quiz. It's not one of these harder ones where you know that they also don't know what they're doing. Because some of them, you're like, come on. Like, till this day, I don't know what the hell was going on in Tenet. I tried. It was like the first time watching, what was that Leonardo DiCaprio one, that Inception dream one? It's Inception. Remember, watching that for the first time. You're like, what? You need at least 4 watches, This one is not one of those. It's
right.
not.
Okay. Well, I'll give it a try on your recommendation. So just quickly jumping back to your birthday quickly. Patrick says birthday's on the 2nd of June, turning 37, approaching 40. Shit. But then people 43 say I'm a baby, lol. People who are 43 say I'm a baby. But I treat birthdays as just another day while friends and family always want to make a fuss. Yeah, I think that's, friends and family do want to make a fuss. I've got another friend who's turning, I can't remember how old he is, but he's got a birthday on Friday, the same day as you, Lebang. And he refuses to do anything crazy. He goes to the mall, he buys himself something, not always expensive, but that's just for him. He has breakfast on his own. This is his thing. This is what he does to celebrate his birthday. He doesn't want to fuss. He doesn't want to party. If any of us try to organize anything for him, he gets upset. So
no surprises. Just no surprises, guys. Just keep it moving, But you're definitely right. To each their own. Like, do you remember when Simpiwe had her birthday? It was a thing. There was a birthday list. There was a freaking brunch, lunch. It was like a whole thing. And because that's her personality. So it would make sense for her to do something like that. I just realized that the older I get, and there's a term that goes finishing the calendar. I'm there now. The calendar's done. I feel less and less, there. Like, I'm just like, can I just be with the people I love? If the answer is yes, that is enough for me. And I'm happy to keep it moving. Yeah.
Jumping back and forth to the movies again, Kuhle says that the common factor with Tenet, Inception, and Interstellar, it's all Christopher Nolan.
Christopher Nolan, yes.
That's genius. All right, so he's the one behind all these movies that hurt our brains. And then lots of other people talking about Quentin Tarantino and Guy Ritchie with their movies where you sometimes jump around on the timeline. And those were the movies that kind of broke that idea of chronological time.
Yeah,
so that's also.
But you see, with that Guy Ritchie era of like rock and roll, that was like the beginning of all of this, dare I say, because at that point we had never seen anything like that. It was exciting, it was new, it was almost like the lens into like a whole culture on another side of the world that is actually that hectic and that interesting. So it would always keep you on your toes. Whereas I think this era is more like, we want you to sit and think and calculate. And Doug, I don't want to sit and calculate. I want to watch this movie. I want to see Brad Pitt without a shirt, and I want to go to sleep with a smile on my face. That's all. Am I asking for a lot?
That's all.
Not a lot.
That's all you want. Well, all right. I mean, someone else points out, can Matt Damon please stop needing to be rescued in movies? If I had to count, Tracy says the number of times Matt Damon had to be rescued: Saving Private Ryan, The Martian, Interstellar, and a whole bunch of others, to name a few. So yes, Matt Damon was stopped getting stranded somewhere, because that's usually the basis of all of these movies. Dr. Robbins says on the birthdays, it's my daughter's birthday today, and it's mine on Friday too. I'm older than Lebang, out of the baby making years. Ooh. Well, Lebang has not wasted those baby making years, let me tell you.
Happy birthday to your daughter as well.
Absolutely. I don't want to feel sorry for myself, because there isn't really a perfect time. But August, when when I have my birthdays, it's the worst month to have a birthday. It's windy. When it's dry, it's windy, it's cold. Everything is dead. There are no leaves on the trees. It's miserable outside. You have to be, heaters and things like that around you inside. It's not great. And May, you still got it's still pretty. That autumn, the autumn colors are outside. That's a little bit more attractive than August. Just
but
worth
it's cold.
noting.
I think I'd rather, what the thing is with August? August knows what it is. August knows that it's cold, and that's that. May is like, I'm cold, but sometimes the sun is out, but sometimes you can get away with a crop top, but please put on the coat. It's confusing. Whereas August tells you straight up, it's cold, put on the coat. You know what you're dealing with.
This, and just yesterday, around probably about 4, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I was outside, and I was on a call, and I suddenly I felt like the sun was warm. It was actually, I didn't feel freezing cold outside. I was like, this is not so bad. That's not going to be the case for very long, though. Congo Chris says, dear everyone who's born in November, please be advised you're the result of your mum giving your dad a Valentine's Day present. That's an interesting point.
Wow,
August, just like me and Zach, means that our parents, we are New Year's babies. We were made in New Year. 8 to 9 months, yeah.
You guys,
Christmas,
wow.
New Year, somewhere around there. So we were made in summer, but we were produced 9 months later in like the end of winter. Zach says my birthday's in August as well. I never tell people when it is. It's boring as fuck. Yeah, you rather don't make a fuss if you don't need to make a fuss. I appreciate that friend of mine. He sent me this message yesterday because I said, ooh, it's your birthday on Friday. He's like, yeah, just remember, I don't want anything. Don't want a fuss.
Yeah.
Don't want people to make, don't want a party. Don't want any noise. Don't buy me a present. It's just my quiet day. That's what I do. So different strokes. That's all I can.
Different strokes. I like that. Zach asked a bit earlier, are we ever going to see the next rock and roller from Guy? I've been asking this question all of my life. Like when I first saw rock and roller, I even did a monologue from one of the scenes for my drama class in matric, my finals. I loved it that much. Since then, every year, I'm like, guys, when is the second rock and roller coming out? We need it. We deserve it. I know there's been petitions that have been signed. Guys, Guy Ritchie is just not interested. He doesn't like. He's just keeping it moving. It doesn't look like we're going to be getting it ever. Like, just sadly, just cut your hopes there, because I've been waiting to answer your question. Been waiting.
I know this is probably not the most interesting thing to talk about, but there've got to be some ways we can save some money. And we often have various people like Joe Camino and so on coming to talk to us about insurance, and I can cut back on that. But you said just now, you might want to leave the cornflakes on the shelf, things like that. What kind of stuff do you realize that when money's tight, you just cut loose? You don't waste money on that stuff anymore. One of my things, Uber Eats, yeah, you got to say goodbye to that. Although if you don't cook like me, that's going to be a hard task, because I'll use Uber Eats at least once a week. But now I'll have to cut that out as well. And I do mean it, because everybody's looking at their bank balance at the moment going, can't afford to waste anything. You cannot afford it. So I think that's a good one. I think the other thing is you could probably cut down on alcohol. And I know this hurts some people's feelings. It hits them right in the chest. It's something no one wants to think about. But if you cut down on, alcohol is getting damned expensive too. And if you maybe cut 3/4 of that bill out, I think you find you have a little bit more cash in the bank.
Yeah,
and you have a
I
little
don't know
bit
if
more
I
food
don't know
and
if we're
basic.
ready for that as a country to have to sit there and say, you know what, I only earn this much, therefore I'll cut down on my alcohol, my bourgeois intake. South Africans are more likely to cut down on their food intake than their alcohol intake. I don't know what it is, but you'll always find money for alcohol, guys. You'll complain and say there's no petrol money, there's no food money. There will always be money for good times and alcohol. That's just the South Africa that we live in.
Riv says, in accordance with our conversation earlier, cut down on underwear.
Now we're talking. Now we're talking. Just go commando.
Well, I think I've said this before, but I really haven't done any serious clothes shopping for a long, long time. I've been wearing pretty much the same clothes for the last 3 or 4 years, and they're okay. I mean, none of it's that bad. If it does get that bad, I hope someone will tell me. But that's another area you can get rid of them. Woolies Avos. Oh yeah, we can cut those out. That'll cut your bond in half. I mean, absolutely. And in my case, I won't have to cut my hand. South Africa would get withdrawal symptoms from cutting down on alcohol. More riots, says Ricky.
Yeah.
It's a good idea. Good point, rather. Not a good idea.
Yeah, I think like the luxuries that you have, those things you can cut out, whatever those luxuries are for you in your personal life, where you don't need this, but it's a nice to have, and just because you can afford it, very soon you're probably gonna have to start thinking like that, like, I don't need to actually eat out every weekend. I don't actually need to, buy myself that thing, or whatever the case is. Things that you used to be able to afford are really, going to stop being tricky.
I mentioned last week that now I very seriously plan, if I do a trip to the office, then I try to do everything else in that trip as well. So I'll go for my haircut, I'll go to the shops, I'll try to do it all on the same day that I go to the office. And then I cut down on petrol because I'm only doing one. So for example, like Wednesdays, I'm not going to leave the house, so I don't have to waste money on an unnecessary trip, because petrol is going to be the big one. And the other one is to go around your house and find stuff that you really don't use. And this is tough for some of us, especially those of us who gather things, who collect things.
Say it with your chest, hoarders.
Thank you. You're right. Okay, I'm gonna own that. But you think about all the the extra stuff that you have lying around, like old phones or machines that you haven't used for a long, long time, whether it's in the garage, whether it's something that you bought or you were given as a gift that you don't use. I reckon some of us can sell that. I mean, Silicide points out, I don't have a Disney Netflix subscription. So that's a good point. You could also cut those out. I wonder how many people have said bye-bye to DSTV, to Netflix, to all of those kinds of things, because a lot of the stuff, you don't really need. And I wonder whether subscriptions in general have gone right down. We know that Netflix's share price has been hit hard by like millions of people just cutting their Netflix. So if that's happening in America, you better believe it's happening here too, right? Woody says,
Yeah.
I'm a gamer. I don't know how much money I've spent on in-game purchases. That's another thing.
Please tell us, Woody.
If you're
That
a
thing is
serious
costly.
gamer, you will spend a fortune on that stuff.
No, it's expensive.
Entertainment in general. If you think about people who buy like expensive TVs and entertainment systems at home, even people who spend a lot of money on their cars, that's something that I think we may see a reduction in over the next while. So
you don't need the shiny rims. The rims don't need to spin. I don't want to see my reflection in your rims. We don't need the lights underneath again, just like tone it down a little bit on the nice to haves, the luxuries. There's this game, Gareth, that my son just is constantly playing. It's called Roadblocks. It's a craze. And he actually asked me to buy him like Roadblocks blah blahs, like points or coins or whatever. So I'm like, oh, I mean, sure. How much is it going to be? This child had the nerve to tell me it's only $300. I was like, sorry, it's only 300. He's like, if I get the 300 Rand one, then I'll get 1,000 coins. I can get a new jacket for my avatar. I was like, dude, no way.
Yeah.
Find another way to get. You see, and imagine, if you're constantly saying yes to your kid for things like that, now you're gonna have to start, reconsidering, because it's not only $300 anymore. That's like, enough petrol to get you from here to work every day for the next week. So,
well, this is why I bring up, is because I don't want this show to just be a place where we talk a whole lot of nonsense. I mean, it's got to be somewhere where you can actually learn some useful things. And Dude 69 disagrees with you and I, Lebang, says you can cut down on booze, become a weekend alcoholic. Nobody needs to drink every day that ends with the letter Y. Yeah, I don't drink during the week anyway, but yes, I hear you. There are lots of people who do, and that's probably where the expenses rack up. When times are hard, switch from heroin to fentanyl. Just takes a little and is to die for. I know you're being sarcastic, parallel parking, but that is mean when there's so many people in America who have exactly that problem. Goldashik says, I just canceled my gym contract, running outside with my dog now, which is actually so much more enjoyable. Well, there's another thing.
Very
you think about how many people have expensive gym contracts and they don't go to the gym. That can save you some money too. Good one. I like this. The mistake people make, Gary says, is they try to cut out the big things, but it's the small costs that make all the difference. Give us an example, Gary. What do you mean?
I think, for example, the subscriptions, right? So if you have a Netflix account, a DSTV account, a Disney Plus account, a freaking Showmax account, and whatever else is out there, if you put all those little accounts together, that probably comes to around 1,000 Rand and then some. Every single month, that's what you're parting ways with. But if you can just like get rid of those small little things, in the long run, you've actually gotten rid of a big chunk. I think that's probably what Gary's, trying to say. Because those things, especially things like subscriptions, they catch you off guard. On the 16th, in the middle of the month, Netflix will go clink, and you go, ha.
Well, I did a little while ago. I managed to, this is probably about 2 or 3 years ago, I changed my phone contract, and I get lots more data and not so many of those other stupid things that I don't use. I mean, how often are you actually calling people or SMSing? They still charge for SMSs in some places. I'm like, what do I need that for? So I've managed to get that right down. I mentioned insurance earlier because Joe's always on about that whenever Joe Camino is on the show. He told us, you've got to ask them to lower your house insurance. And when you do, they sometimes will, or else you move to someone else who definitely will. So those are the kinds of things that we're talking about. Dogoza says, I want to cut my medical aid, but the company that I work for won't let me. I don't know if you should be doing that, because that's probably not such a good idea.
Yeah. And I think negotiating, like having the ability to negotiate, you'll be surprised. Some of these people will actually hear you out and they'll say, okay, cool. You know what? You've got a point. Let me just. I'm currently doing this whole house hunting thing and the transfers and the what's, which is literally milking me to the tea. And the lady that's like handling my transfer fees, I literally just said to her, dude, where do you expect me to get this kind of money? Please find a way to just give me a discount. And she was like, okay. And I was like, oh, it's that easy? So I don't have to pay 300,000. I just ask for less and you'll do it. Wow.
If you don't ask, you don't get. That makes a lot of sense. Jared says you can save a lot of money by not being lazy. I used to buy pre-cooked chicken. I've cut my bill in half by buying fresh chicken and just taking the time to cook it myself every day. But that's a good point. Gary also just wants to clear up that he does mean those subscription services, 250 Rand here, 300 Rand there, wrong phone contract structures. Lebang is spot on. And Stevie says, hey guys, I can totally relate. Between Roblox and Fortnite, I have had to incentivize for my 9-year-old because, geez, it's insane what they charge for measly little add-ons and skins, etc.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
It's amazing. And you think about it, for them, there's no cost. It's not like it's coming off a shelf. They just upload the package, and
exactly. It's instant gratification. Literally. Yeah.
But for the company
kids,
that makes it, it's pure
and for
profit.
companies.
Amazing. What a thing to sell.
And how many kids around the world do you think are like swindling their parents into just giving them the credit card so they can just put in the details and get whatever they want? It's crazy.
Yeah. All right. Well, there's some useful info there, everybody. And I appreciate all the input from people who've got some pretty good ideas about where we can save left, right, and center. Right now, though, I want to reintroduce to you someone who is no stranger to cliffcentral.com and someone who we love to hear from. Every time he comes on, we end up upgrading ourselves in some way. It's like those downloads that you get in the games when you want to up your game, literally and figuratively. You speak to Rich Mulholland. He spent close on 25 years helping multinational organizations, top executives, and international professional speakers to deliver unforgettable presentations that activate audiences. He's spoken in over 30 countries across all 6 continents and is the author of 3 books, with a 4th in the pipeline. You may remember the last time we spoke to him, it was about his latest book. He's written Legicide, Boredom Slayer, Here Be Dragons, and he is a vegan, but he tries not to talk about it all the time and fails at that. Here he is, Rich Mulholland. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. Meat is murder.
Nice to see you, Rich. How you doing?
To the guy who wants to save money, chop it on his chicken. I got an upgrade. No more chicken.
Yeah, but
I'm doing great. I'm doing fantastic.
Well,
I mean, well.
I'm not going to cut meat out of my diet, so don't even start with your vegan shit right at the start of the show. We'd prefer to talk about other things. I had an agenda for bringing you on here, and I want to get that out of the way first before we talk, because every time I end up talking to you, and Lebang's going to realize this very quickly too, it ends up becoming like a conversation that goes everywhere, which I love. You're always, you're around someone when the conversation doesn't have to have talking points and you don't have to plan it. It's like going for lunch with an old friend. So that's how I feel. But before we get to the old friend part of this, I just want to bring up something that I'm sorry it's taken us so long to get here. But Lebang, you'll catch on quickly. So some guy tweeted a while ago, this is probably like 2-3 months ago. He tweeted a collection of books that he'd laid out on his bed that he was making his way through. And this is the picture he put up there. These are all the books that he's reading. There's a Jeff Bezos book. There are books called like Attitude is Everything. There's Everything is Fucked by Mark Maron. There are a whole lot of books here that you may recognize. Adam Grant is there, Limitless. We've got some business books. We've got some life, books about how you can improve your life, self-help books, those kinds of things. But a nice selection of books here, some of them by famous CEOs, some of them by philosophers, some of them really books that everybody's reading. They're on bestseller lists, a lot of these. And this guy tweeted this out, and he put it out for everybody to see. And I noticed that Rich Mulholland had commented under there, because a whole lot of people had come in and said, those aren't very smart books. You must be an idiot because you're reading books that everybody else is reading. And those books are just going to, turn you into the same as everybody else. And everybody had something critical to say about his selection of books in a country where so few people read. And Rich was like, you know what? All these people who are criticizing your book choice, I wonder how many books they're reading. And if they really think like it, that they're superior to you in some way because they've chosen Tolstoy's War and Peace, or God forbid something else. So I just wanted to talk to you about that because it resonated with me. I suddenly it hit a nerve, and I was as annoyed as you were by people who were annoyed with the original guy for putting out the selection of books.
Yeah, so for me, it was a form of this intellectual virtue signaling. Look how intellectual I am because I disagree. I don't read the top 20 books. It's basically the equivalent of I don't listen to the charts music, or I don't do
Too
whatever it is
commercial.
that's popular. Yeah.
Yeah.
And intellectual snobbery for me is one of the worst types. It's you may as well just have retweeted the tweet and said, I am an asshole. I mean, there's just nothing else to it. It's so vapid and empty. And to go to war with anybody promoting reading just seems like such an absurdity to me. Now, for what it's worth, I looked at the list and it was a little bit of an easy list to make. It was the list that was going to get you the most likes and retweets because there was something that most people would have read, and the average reader would look at it and think, oh, look how smart I am. I'm on, I've read 10 of the top 20 books and, posted their number on it. So what? So what?
Yeah.
Let them enjoy their moment. I think it's great that people are trying to level up in any regard.
Of course, Rich. And also we live in a country where, frankly, a lot of people just aren't reading. And some of them aren't reading because they're just lazy. Let's admit that straight up. But some people are not reading because they wish they could just have 3 of those books. They can't afford to buy any books in the physical form. If they're lucky, they can maybe download some PDF version of it that's illegally made, they've stolen off the internet maybe. But I don't think a lot of people are even bothering to read because they're just lazy. And reading anything is good for you. I remember talking to someone once who's way smarter than me. And you talk about leveling up. This guy said to me when he grew up, he didn't have a lot of reading material around. He would read everything, the menu, the warning labels on like household appliances. He would read everything he could in whatever language it was written, the label on a shampoo bottle, because it would teach him about the word for this in Arabic or Arabic's hard to read, obviously, but in French or in Spanish or in, whatever the language might have been that was on the label. And I think there's so many people who they try to exercise this kind of superiority over others, people they haven't even met, people they don't need to be superior towards, for no reason other than it makes them feel special. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Now, the flip side to this as well, I actually ended up doing a TED Talk about this years ago, is the other side of that. And this is going to maybe sound that I'm being counter my own narrative, but it's not, is that the people who read too much for the sake of reading. And this is going to sound weird, but I think we consume so many knowledge calories that we forget to burn. And sometimes I think that people are just trying to layer book after book after book after book to make a record. Like I've read every single I've read all 30 of the books that guy laid out on his bed. But actually, I think that we need to read, but I think we need to read something. Instead of taking notes in a book, we need to write down actions. And then as a result of the books we read, we need to do something different. I actually think we should do some form of intermittent fasting with intellectual consumption, where we kind of agree that we're not going to start consuming more knowledge calories until we started burning the ones we've already got. Because if we're constantly just feeding our brain, we are so busy consuming the new cognitive calories that we're not actually giving ourselves any time to let the other ones settle into our daily habits and use.
And especially with those practical books that are trying to give you those things, I mean, a lot of books are just great stories, or they'll tell you someone else's story, or they'll give you an insight into an idea. But the books that were largely laid out on the bed, some of those books are practical how-to guides, how to improve your life, how to make better decisions, the magic of thinking big, start with why, the 5 habits, the 5 a.m. club. These are the kinds of things that are actually practical. People can put them into the way that they do things in their lives. And I mean, Phil Knight's Shoe Dog, for example, a lot of people look at that and go, oh God, if one more person tells me to read that. But the reason it's become popular is because people want to know that stuff.
Yeah, that book is the top of my list of shame that I really do want to get to reading, but I kind of get to biographies and holidays, and there's always a list and things like that. So I'd like to get there. I do think absolutely that people should read. I also think, by the way, that not enough fiction. We glorify nonfiction, but nowadays, good fiction is so well written and so well researched. And in fact, why I love fiction myself, I'm actually in a book club with Entrepreneurs Organization. We talked about this the other day. And for me, what it is about fiction is that you have to do a lot of the rendering yourself. When I'm consuming a business book, I'm reading it and it's just coming into my brain. But when I'm reading an act of fiction, so say Project Hail Mary, there's so much work that my brain has to do to render all of these little different details to start getting an understanding of the world that has been built. That actually, I think that leads to a lot of my personal creativity because I love reading things that require me to do that so often. And I think that people ignore fiction at their peril. Again, that's another big area of intellectual snobbery. Oh, I don't waste time on fiction. That's like eating junk food for the brain. Bullshit.
Yeah, I completely agree. And maybe also because we've become a bit lazy. All the best fiction stories are turned into movies before people can even read them. So it forces you to not have to use your own imagination, right, Lebang? I mean, you don't need to read Harry Potter. Just wait for them to come out with the next movie.
Exactly. You can just sort of like watch the next big thing. Rich, I want to find out, like, does this stuff really work? And I'm playing devil's advocate here, but if I'm reading, you know, like a self-help book that'll tell me 5 habits of this, 5 a.m. club, does it actually work? And like you're saying, we need to get from a place of just reading to action. For the most part, we're just reading. You know, we're not necessarily like letting it get to that point where it's like, okay, now I'm going to start applying everything that I've just read. So I don't know, I'm a little bit on the fence here, because it kind of makes me think about these motivational speakers, which I'm sure you've done quite a bit of in your journey. Think of it's like, you know, am I going to listen to a complete stranger tell me how to get my shit together? Or am I the one who's going to, you know what I mean? Like, do these books actually work? And how better should I be reading them then so that they work?
Right, so the books don't work. It's not the book's job to work. It's your job to work. And I think that's quite a thing that we have to understand. We're not going to read and intuit. It's not the Matrix. So it's not like that I consume a book and all of a sudden I'm able to do Kung Fu. At some point, I actually have to go and take what I've done and turn it into action. And that's why I say that we confuse notes with actions. So for me, books definitely work. I do every morning from 9 to 10, I do craft hour during the week. And that is where I read books only to do with my profession. And then I sit and I make notes about what it is I learned. And I make sure that I work that into a communication, that I add that into one part of my ritual. Every day, every morning before I wake up, I do my 10-10-10, read, write, and reflect. And then I go and I build up things and I question myself. What should I have done more of yesterday? What did I do? What could I have done better yesterday? My to-do better list. And these little small things start getting me to take the new inputs that I get in small 10-minute bursts. And because I'm only reading in these short bursts and I'm trying to take my biggest reflections from there, it allows me to actually become better. So yesterday I went to jiu-jitsu with my kids and we did a 2-hour lesson. When I came home, I go into Rome Research, an app I use, and I just went through all the new little bits of information. So the mistakes I was making and things like that. And I took some time to write them down. When I go back to jits again tomorrow night, that's one little detail that'll be factored. But the difference is that I realize that I have a job. And generally that job isn't just while you're reading. If you are not giving yourself reflection time after reading time, your brain is going directly to the next activity. And this is just going into your brain and your RAS, your reticular activation system or whatever. It's just saying, okay, that was junk food. We don't need it, and throws it out. I may be overplaying the RAS here, but it's the same sort of idea. You go into cognitive dumping. And as for motivational speakers, first of all, I hate motivational speakers. I like speakers that actually provide some degree of value. And a lot of speakers who are inspirational do that. But for us, when you write a speech, you've got 4 steps. You want to give them a reason to care, give them a reason to believe, tell them what they need to know, and most importantly, tell them what they need to do. If you look at Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth, at the end of it, he's painted this horrible picture. And at the end of it, he said, guys, I'm asking you one thing. Just use an energy-saving light bulb. That was the action. And what you do is you get people to do one action in the correct direction. And thereafter, they try to be consistent with those actions. So the speaker, and I guess the book has a job to play, but the smallest of the 2 jobs. The biggest job is that you decide that you're consuming knowledge, not for the purpose of consumption, but for the purpose of action.
Quick question. Is there an intellectual snobbery attached to listening to an audiobook as opposed to reading the book?
Perhaps. I find audiobooks really, really amazing for great fiction because they're so theatrical. I listened to Atomic Habits on audiobook. And I was on my motorcycle and I would listen and I would, writing and doing these things. But because I'm such an avid note taker and I'd make notes and actions, you're not going to stop. And it's actually harder. So I use a service called Readwise, which takes any highlights I make in a book and it pops it into my Readwise. And then every morning, this morning included, it reserves me 5 highlights. And those highlights I can actually reflect on. In an audiobook, that's a lot harder. I've got a cat visitor. I'm going to have to bribe this guy with... I'm going to have to bribe this guy with tweets. There you go.
I wondered where the cat was coming from.
Yeah, it just stuck in. I'm going to have a half-naked wife run up the stairs, and you all know Jazz coming to get the cat in a second. So for me, I do think there's another snobbery. So okay, I see both of you have books behind you. I believe that is a form of snobbery. I think there is almost no argument other than for keepsake value that would involve you not using a Kindle when you're reading. I think it is more efficient and better for learning in almost every single way that I could do probably an hour show with you just debating the values of that.
Fair enough. People often say to me when they see these books, they're like, "Oh, but have you read any of those books?" I've read, most of them are reference books. I mean, especially like these books are like history, a compendium of English history, for example. So you haven't read every single part of it, but one night I'll pick it up and I'll go, okay, well, let me read this chapter or whatever. But all the books that are biographies and I don't read a lot of fiction. It's a failing of mine. I certainly don't think it's stupid to read fiction, but I prefer nonfiction. I have read them and I love them. And some of them I remember and some of them I'll even read twice. But the classics, Rich, there's a volume of really powerful stuff in the classics. The greatest stories of humankind are just repeats of the old hero's journey, which, Homer had figured that out in the Iliad. And you can go back and read those originals, and it'll blow your mind how much, again, imagination it activates.
Totally. Again, and I'm not saying this to be flippant, but fiction, the imagination required in fiction there. And don't get me wrong, Gareth, I do buy books. So my favorite book on presenting is How to Win an Argument by Cicero. I listened to the audiobook first, actually, and I was doing it in my walks in the morning in my craft hour. And I was making these little notes, and I thought, no, I've got to do this again properly. So I got the Kindle version. I did my highlights. And then, so I have all my highlights, they're all locked away. But that is a book I want an artifact of. So I got the artifact and I put it on the bookshelf. In fact, our bookshelf downstairs reflects Jazz and I's and the kids to a degree favorite. It would actually be a nice cross-section of the books that have made the biggest impact. Another book I added last year that I've not opened, but I've read in full in audio was Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights. That book I thought was just so brilliant that I thought, no, I want an artifact as well. Now, that site might seem like a weird form of consumerism, but for me, it's not. That becomes the book that I can lend out. That becomes the book that I can chat about, use as a prop in conversation. And I think there's massive value in that. I think maybe I was a bit of the asshole there. I'm not dissing regular books. I'm saying that to look down on e-reading and to see this as a form of you're not doing it properly is the problem. And I think I wasn't clear when I said that. Whereas for me, I think that there's so much efficiency from a learning point of view. I've got a remote control for this. You would laugh. At the side of my bed is an arm that holds up. I climb into my covers and I push the button to turn the pages. Now that might not sound like a life upgrade until it's like you don't need an air fryer until you have an air fryer. You do not need a remote control to turn pages of a book until you've tried it. Nobody's going to say to you this was shit.
Rich, you mentioned the kids earlier, and I'm glad you did, because this is something I'm currently having to try and maneuver. Is getting my kids into the habit of taking reading as a serious thing. And obviously lead by example, so I'll whip out a book and then it'll be family time, we'll all read together. But how do I get them to get into the habit of wanting to read on their own? Because I'm not always going to be there for them to, choose this thing, but I do desperately want to enforce it and make sure that they, view it as an important thing. Because by the time I got to high school, I was like, oh, books, schmooks, books are so annoying. They're so boring, only because I didn't grow up in the kind of household where books were really pushed down my throat. And I would kind of like to do that for my kids. So how are you managing that? Is it working? And how can I also get my kids to view books as a real part of their lives?
So both my kids, we kind of encouraged to read, and they went through a phase where they went into fiction. So they did really, really enjoy. I say fiction more like your fantasies. Your what's his name, Pullman and Rowling, things like that. Okay, so I think Callum really went deep on that. Peter thingy, whatever. I haven't read them. The Greek mythology ones, and then Bailey was very much into Harry Potter and absolutely finished those and loved them, and that was amazing. What changed those later? I started getting frustrating because they weren't reading. And then they both said, but we are reading. And what they're reading is manga. And I think I might get a term wrong. Not webtoons. It might be webtoons. They're these progressive, episodic little web cartoons that appear on different websites. And my first thought was, no, stop doing that. And, you got to read real books and real things. And then I thought, no, hold on a second. They're reading. It's a start. It's something. They're getting a love of holding a device and doing some consumption. I love comic books, by the way, as well. In fact, at the moment, I'm working through the Sapiens Volume 2, which is the graphical version of the book. And actually, I'm preferring it. I think it's quite magnificent and beautifully done. And I do enjoy comic books, but I do think that it gives some of the rendering, you're kind of watching as opposed to just creating. But right now, I'm not going to war with any of that. As long as they're doing something to consume content by reading, that's a good start for me. And if you're not going to win them over with the likes of here's the Harry Potter series or Star Wars or whatever the case may be, because it's 1970. But but if you're not going to win them over with that, I would seriously. I mean, in fact, you wouldn't even have to. They will probably be leaning into manga or these webtoons and things like that themselves.
There's a current obsession with anime, which I'm like, okay, cool. That's not bad because that's not too far off from manga and stuff. So I'll see how it goes. I'll see how it goes.
Mean, how's that any different to the Asterix books that I was addicted to when I was a kid? I mean, it's the same, and it's just beautifully done. Yeah. So Congo Chris says that fiction often paves the way for real life. Isaac Asimov wrote lots of science fiction and now is considered the grandfather of robotics and AI. That's absolutely right. If you laugh at or see what I did in my last comment, you're a genius. So here's what Sanele wants. He wants us to give him credit for this. Just hit me. I've read everything and only listened to 2 audiobooks, Will Smith's and Trevor Noah's. It's funny that. Well, okay.
It.
Let's just give him a round of applause so he can feel good about himself. So, Rich, a lot of people commenting on, and the last time you were on, you told us how to upgrade our web, our participation in meetings online and being able to do virtual meetings and all the rest of it. You help people with some software that would get their cameras upgraded, make their background look better. I saw Darren said just now, look at that. I saw Darren said just now, you look like you've just woken up in a nightclub. Looks pretty damn cool there.
It does.
I got my lighting control, can change things around.
Wow, look at that.
Yeah. Fancy.
That's good. But this stuff, it does help. And I mean, if you are still sitting around, you said this maybe a year and a half ago, if you're still sitting around after all this time that we've been kind of changing the way that we do stuff, working from home, doing things virtually, you are being stupid because you're going to be left behind. If not, you're already left behind.
Yeah, but please keep doing it, right? Because it's making the few of us that make an effort look better. And that's really, really helpful. A tiny amount, you know how they say that how good looking a lot of people are, it's simply the difference between effort and lack of effort. Mm-hmm. Like average people put in a bit of effort and they look much better. I kind of feel that that's the same in how you show up into meetings. Is that all that people get to see when I arrive in a meeting? And even though, I'm off to Boston next week and then Seattle the week after, and I have had to start leaving home a little bit to work, and I understand that's going to happen. However, I'm still doing my sales meetings this way, and I'm still going to show up, and people still comment on the background and the effect and how things are. And if I bring up slides and content, and make those appear, people will always say, hey, how did you do that? And of course, we're a presentation company and that's helpful. But for anybody, just leveling up ever so slightly is an unfair advantage for you. And I think that people are now saying, but we're going back to offices and things like that. A lot of businesses are going back 2 or 3 days a week. That's because they want to be around themselves. If you are in any type of sales or business development, or general day-to-day meetings, they're still primarily going to happen this way because it's simply more efficient. So
Correct.
most of your externally facing meetings, where you're meeting a customer maybe externally for the first time or for an update, is still going to happen this way. Why would you not want to put your best foot forward? These little strip lights on Amazon shipped directly to my house in South Africa, I don't know, but maybe I've got some slightly more expensive ones. But for the most part, those strip lights, I maybe spent like 2,000 Rand on. And I understand for some people that's a material amount, but it's not when you start looking more impressive, getting that promotion, winning, those deals and things like that. It's a small little investment. And if people started looking at this as an investment as opposed to a burden or a grudge purchase, and they changed their mindset around that and saying, like, how can I give myself and my career an unfair advantage? Because all of a sudden your background speaks about you and not your company. Whereas forever, if you appeared in any way and you had a meeting, everything other than you is a message about just your business. Mm-hmm. Now it's a message about you yourself. And people are not, they're kind of saying, well, if the company doesn't pay for this, but I think they're doing it at their peril.
Also, I mean, if you're going to invest in your brain, which is the whole reason we started talking about books, then you got to invest in everything else too. Try to upgrade everything simultaneously. So isn't some part of you left behind in the old you that makes it look like you're dated and irrelevant?
Yeah, investing in yourself is a core part of my belief system. I work under this premise. I've now come to terms with the fact that I just think of myself, I believe there are 3 versions of us, past, present, and future. And the only job of the present version of ourselves is to curate a better future for the person that comes tomorrow. So fill up the petrol on the way home. I think we've even spoken about this before. Fill up the petrol on the way home. Untie your shoelaces when you take them off. Small little things like that. But actually spending some time upgrading your environment, your system, yourself. I spend an hour a day, as I said, focusing only on the job, literally reading books and consuming presentations about the job that I have done for the last 25 years. The cool thing is that I'm reading all my competitors' books and they're not reading mine. What an unfair advantage. What an unfair advantage. Oh, and by the way, the other thing is, I thought I was special. I thought my 25 years counted for something. With one possible exception, I have not read a single book about presentations or public speaking or any related field that hasn't taught me a ton about this profession that I thought I had dialed in.
Yeah, you see a little humility. You also see that when you're spreading yourself over a bunch of other source material, and you're figuring out you don't actually have any. Nothing's original either, right, Rich? Nothing's original. Stop getting worried about
under the sun. Yeah.
Yeah, you're not Leonardo da Vinci, but you can learn all the things that he learned.
So, and that's the job of the authors and the creator. That's your job right now, right? You guys are sharing ideas with people, but what you're doing is there's an intersection that exists between the world's knowledge and how that impacts us right now. And my job is to take the works of Cicero, right, or any of the great rhetors or anybody like that, and even people, Dale Carnegie a bit later, and Nancy Duarte and Gar Reynolds, and to try create a version of that is the most relevant, that lands with the most relevant for now. The subtle art of not giving a fuck, which I actually couldn't listen to, bizarrely, I swear, but Jazz and I actually had to turn it off. We were listening on a long drive on an audiobook, and it was just like, this guy says fuck too much. It's actually, the joke is wearing off, and we actually couldn't listen to it. Not technically, I'm sure it's a brilliant book, but it's basically Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, a book from years before that has been rewritten. Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. A lot of people love that book, but you could also just go to the source and read Finite and Infinite Games by Cost. This stuff, and I'm not taking anything away. In fact, I think that's your biggest opportunity. If you're not sure what to talk about, or if you want to be a speaker, or you're not sure what to write about, if you want to be an author, take your favorite content from 10 years ago and rewrite it with more relevance today. Just get a spin on it. Have one idea that's counterintuitive or counter-narrative.
Yeah, that's such good advice. That is so helpful. I'm going to put that into practice myself this morning. So you see, I've already found a reason to upgrade. What do you think, Lebang?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. There's nothing new under the sun, but there's always how you do it. It's the same thing with content creation. It's like, especially now with social media, everybody wants to be a content creator because it just looks so cool. But there's so much content out there. Where do you start? find what you like, and just, zhuzh it up, remix it, do it in your special way. But there's nothing new under the sun. And if you know that, then you'll appreciate the way that you do things. So I'm with you, Rich. I'm with you.
My wife, she's been on the show a number of times. She's an artist. And when she started working, a lot of people said her work is a lot like an artist called Basquiat. And that was her point of it. She was like, oh, I like that. That inspired her to create her own. But when I look at her downstairs, she's actually got a show coming up next month. When I look at her downstairs, I don't think for a single second, in fact, when people make that Basquiat reference, it kind of feels to me like it's almost that cheap joke. Like it's a style. It's such an easy one to make. But when we understand, when we stop punishing people for having a source of inspiration, and again, this goes all back to this idea of intellectual snobbery at the very, very beginning. It's okay that your work is that's so derivative. Correct. Well done, Captain Obvious. Everything is derivative. Start celebrating the derivations.
But you know where this comes from. This comes from people who are trying to just categorize things. It's very hard. We're pattern-seeking mammals, and we try to find a way of making sense of the world around us. And sometimes there's too much information, so we simplify it by stereotyping or by looking at something and going, oh, well, that's just a version of. Because then our brain can, in an orderly fashion, file it somewhere. That's really all our brain's trying to do. We think we're terribly creative and hugely inspirational, and we've got lots of complicated factors all working at the same time. Your brain is actually just a pattern recognition machine, really. And if you can figure that out, then you can also get beyond the snobbery of saying, well, that person is just a kind of this, and start to appreciate it for what it is.
Yeah, for me, and I talk quite a bit about this, but everything about this intersection idea, your brain, all you're trying to do is to create a better coordinate in somebody's brain. If you go to New York City and you ask somebody for directions, they won't say it's on, 500 or go up to 500, 37th Street or whatever. They'll say you're going to go to the intersection of 5th and West 47th, because they've created a point that you actually now have multiple points of reference. And in fact, that's all most ideas are. It's this, but that. And in fact, one of my frustrations with most branding, the way that we present ourselves, is that we present ourselves only by trying to widen the avenue. I am in the presentation industry, and we're widening the avenue. For years, our why was that we wanted to be, a little bit unconventional. Whereas now we want it to be about that, but process. And I think that everybody's got to figure that out. And when you look at most books that you read, they are taking book A and they're just simply creating a new spin on it. Instead, if we start seeing that as the goal, then I think it will change how we perceive the world around us. We will understand actually how our brain works better, and it will make us better creators.
I love it. I love it. I'm afraid we're going to have to end it there because we're out of time. But as usual, it's lovely to spend some time with you, Rich. And we will speak to you again soon. Have an excellent trip to America. I hope you don't have to mask up or get the monkeypox vaccine or any of that shit while you're over there. And let us know how it goes.
Yeah, me too. Fingers crossed. Thanks so much for having me. It was wonderful chatting to you guys.
All right, man.
Cheers,
Thank
Rich.
you so much. Rich Mulholland. And he says he's got a new book coming out, which is going to be fantastic. I like the way he said, here's your why, but actually the y-axis is that one. But I love the idea, the X and the Y.
No, definitely. He seems very wise. If anybody said to me that my art looks like Basquiat, dude, that is a compliment. I'm like, thank you very much, because it inspired me. If we focus on what you can take from the source, I love that. I'm gonna actually start applying that right now.
Damn right. I've got a list of things now I have to do. So let's get on to it. All right, everybody, have a happy day, and we will see you tomorrow morning at 6:00. Cheers. Bye-bye. Bye.